So welcome everybody. My name is Andrea Gibbons and I am the QI Evidence Lead at Somerset NHS FT. I also look after Evidence for QI, which is a Q community funded project aimed at helping connect QI with knowledge, evidence and best practice, which is essentially about getting us all to share what we know and connect. Today, we're delighted to welcome you to the fourth of our monthly Spotlight sessions. And the purpose of these is to shine the spotlight on how different organisations do QI and share the learning from each of our organisations as part of the QI community. So today's session, we're going to welcome Southern Health NHS FT. During the session, if you do have any questions, comments, reflections, do type them into the chat box. We've got colleagues from E4QI and from Southern Health on hand to monitor and respond to the questions and comments. And there will be time at the end of the session for questions as well. I do need to make you aware that the session is being recorded so that it can be shared after the event with people who were unable to make it today. The recording will also be added to the Spotlight Sessions YouTube playlist, where you can also watch recordings of previous sessions, and I will pop the link to that into the chat box. So without further ado, let me hand over to our fabulous colleagues at Southern Health, who have so generously agreed to share their QI story with us today. So I'm going to hand over to Sophie and the rest of the team. And I'm sure you'll find it as inspirational and exciting as the tidbits that I've heard over the last couple of weeks. So please do enjoy it and stay very much engaged with the conversation. Do, as I say, ask questions and engage with what they have to say. Thanks very much, Sophie, and over to you.
Thank you. What an amazing welcome. So I'm going to share my screen and just go through a few things, but I will also keep an eye on the chat. What I also want to let you know is this will come up as we go through, but I have put a little Slido link in there, which I hope you can see. If you do prefer to ask a question anonymously, then you're very welcome to do that. That's absolutely fine. Just go on to slido.com. You can do that on your mobile, or you can do it on your desktop, however you want. Type in the code, which is Shift SHFT, or you can take a screen grab of the QR code that we've got there. So we have got quite a tight agenda, which is why we will try and answer questions as we go through. But if there are loads coming through, what we'll do is we'll record all the questions and then we'll put some answers down and email them out to you all. And I think what we'll do is we'll do a little bit of an introduction of who we are as well, if that's all right with everyone. But we're a very small team. So the Southern Health, we cover the whole of Hampshire. We've got community and some inpatient units as well. We're a mental health foundation trust, and we have lots of different areas that we cover. Our team is very tiny. We've got 3 QI coaches. We've got 2 experts by experience, our administrator and our new comms expert. I'm hearing a little bit of background noise, but I don't know if anyone could maybe mute themselves. It might be me, or it might be something going on in another office. But either way, I'll carry on. So I'm Sophie Street. I'm a QI coach, and I've been in the QI team on and off on different secondments, and then redeployed throughout COVID and back into the QI team more recently. How does the team feel about introducing themselves? I don't know. Daisy, I can see you on the call. Do you just want to say hi in your role?
Hiya, I'm Daisy. This is my 3rd week, I believe, as part of the QI team. So I do communications and engagement. And yeah, I'm really loving it and learning more and more each day.
Thank you so much, Nathan. I can see your picture.
Hi, yeah, I'm Nathan. I'm the expert by experience lead within the QI team, and we'll talk a bit more about what that is in a moment.
Dean, I can see your icon. Did you want to say hi? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Hi, Sophie. Yeah, sorry, we've got some technical issues here. So camera and microphone coming through Julie's computer. So hi, Dean Garrett, Head of Quality Improvement. Really grateful for Sophie for taking the lead on delivering this spotlight session.
And Julie, I can see you're there as well.
Hello, I'm Julie. I'm admin for the QI team.
Thank you. And we also have Lara, who's our expert by experience. So we are a very tiny team. Our staff base is something like 6,500 staff members, and we cover a really wide number of a really wide population. We've got something like 260 teams at Southern Health. And our function is really about delivering training and delivering coaching, coming up with new training, signposting, and doing whatever we can to facilitate quality improvement. We have about 100-ish trained certified leaders, and we recognise that a lot of those people have perhaps moved on to different roles, or in some cases have progressed into roles that are focused around quality improvement. And some that we would call active and some not active. And that's a right mixture of clinical, administrative, senior operational, and our sort of senior execs as well. So it's a right mixture of people all across the board. And you become a certified leader when you do our 5-day full-on training, which I'll talk a little bit more about. And our purpose, as I said, is really about delivering that training and coaching. So what we deliver, we do a big 5-day session, and then follow-up sessions for people who want to become certified leaders. And this is really specific training around tools and methodologies, some practical observations training, the sort of standard QI, as well as thinking really practically about how to facilitate a workshop week, and then coaching up to a point where actually those staff members then deliver a workshop themselves over about 5 days. And generally what we've done is we've done it in person, we've done it in blocks, and we've been quite fixed around how we've done it. Since COVID, we've had to change things around a little bit, and this month is the first month that we've actually tried delivering it in a more staggered way, just to see if it works. And we're trying that. I think it's 1 day a week we're delivering it with some of our practice educators or our senior members in our learning, education and development team. We run a QI Olympics, which we sort of completely made up, and that is really around delivering some fun, educational, kind of like away day style training, where a team will pick up some specific tools and theories, but they do it through really fun, practical sessions where they're awarded points, and hopefully have a fun time doing it and a bit of team building as well. We have some virtual training that we run, a basic introduction to how QI is delivered and facilitated at Southern Health, with a very brief overview of what are the main things that we do. What is the PDSA cycle? What do we mean when we say waste? How can we really think about what's adding value for the end customer? How to do QI, so if you've got an idea of something that isn't quite working well and you want it to be working better, how would you do that? We've just started running some observations training on how would you go and observe, what tools might you want to use. And as well as that, we deliver personalised training. So whether it's to fit in with an away day or after the specific need, after an incident or something like that, and training that's specifically for staff groups, administrators or AHPs, as well as coaching. I will only briefly go through this slide. There are a couple of links on here, so I'm sure you'll get it and be able to check it out. Closing the loop is something that we're absolutely trying to do more of. I was just saying to Andrea, actually, we, on top of actually delivering the sessions and delivering that practical work and coaching people through work, how can we capture what we've done? How can we share that with others? Is it through posters? Is it through videos? What's the best way of doing it? And we've got a nod to QI Hero, because I know we've talked about that a few times in the QI Comms group. Yeah, has anyone got a way of doing that? It's not something we've done so much more recently over Christmas, but actually we made a real effort in the summer of identifying people who were doing great quality improvement work and sharing that. How can we take photos of it? How can we share it in our bulletin? Can we write up a story? Can we write up more information? And that's why Daisy's role is so fantastic. We're so happy to have someone in that comms role who can support us while we're coaching, delivering training, doing whatever we're doing, actually capture that information, share it, make it, look really attractive, bring people along on the journey with us. So in a very short whirlwind, that's our QI team, but I want to pass over to Nathan now to give you a bit of information about the expert by experience role.
Hi, yeah, so I'm Nathan. I'm an expert by experience leading the team. And what that means is, and I'll kind of give a quick introduction about how I've developed my role and where it's come from, and then a bit about kind of service user and care involvement. So I think nearly 4 years ago now, prior to that, I'd been a service user, or I'm still a service user, and had a long history of Southern Health. Not always the best, we had a bit tricky relationship at times, as in when my mental health has gone up and down. And I was asked to come along to a workshop and give some feedback about my story, about my time as a service user. And so I did that, and I went on to a few different workshops, quality improvement workshops that Southern Health are running over in Portsmouth in the South East. As I said, I came along to those workshops, I gave my story, I answered questions, I gave my feedback, and I got more and more involved in Southern Health via that. And then I was lucky enough to be given the opportunity to come along and do a 5-day certified leader training alongside staff. It was the first time it had been done as a service user coming along to this staff-based training. Obviously, it was intimidating, but I got an awful lot from it. And what I think came from the power of mine and other service users' stories at the workshops, and then coming on to this training, is Southern Health really realised the importance of having service using carers involved in quality improvement, right through from the training and inception of projects, right through the project and to afterwards. So I was offered a job. I was offered the opportunity to apply for a job as an expert by experience in the team. And what that meant was, it's not about my voice, because obviously I was one patient and one service user. It was about the importance of having other service using carers involved in all the projects that are going forward. So by employing me, my role became about identifying and supporting other service users to bring their voice to the training. It was a really authentic way of doing it. I think it wasn't a tick box for Southern Health. Southern Health weren't just thinking, let's just do a bit of service user training. It was service user involvement. It was a real authentic attempt at making sure service users and carers were involved in quality improvement, and it went reasonably well. I loved the job, and it went reasonably well to begin with. And I think before I talk about some of the wins and the successes, I'll talk about some of the challenges we had as well, because it wasn't all easy. And just because I was employed didn't mean that Southern Health had nailed service user and carer involvement. So next slide, please, Sophie. So Southern Health ran some projects. Cohort 1 had 4 projects, cohort 2 had 4 projects, and so on. So there's always a project happening. And I was employed to be a service user voice, as well as bring other people involved. And I think one of the bigger challenges we had was, it's not always easy to identify service using carers. It's not a case of doing a shout out to all service using carers can come and get involved. You have to support people who have to be in the right place in their own journey. So one of the challenges we had, and we're still working on now, is making sure that it's not the same people's voice at the workshops. It's no good me going on and me being a patient representative, because I only represent my experience. I don't know other people's experiences, and I can't comment on that. So one of the challenges we had, is especially early on, was we were using the same service using carers, because we knew they're involved, they know what to expect. We were using the same service using carers involved in all the projects. So we really are working hard now and offering some training to make sure that more and more service using carers are identified and being involved in projects. And it did, to a certain extent, snowball a little bit. We started to have, as more projects came along, more service using carers heard about it and wanted to get involved. So we have had some success with it, but especially with QI, that pool of people has certainly got smaller again. So we're working on expanding that. It's not always easy to support service users and carers on a day. We run 4 projects in one go, and there's only one of me, so it was hard for me to be able to go around and support people. So we identified the idea of having to have things like buddies and the quality facilitators being acutely aware of who they had in the room, to make sure people were supported. So we learned from that early on that things like buddies and stuff is really important, because making sure if they're in a room full of staff that they're able to get the right support as the project goes on, because it can be quite triggering, it can be quite intense for service using carers that get involved. And I think one of the other challenges we had, and we're working on now is closing the loop. People went into the service user involvement really keen to get service users and carers involved. They understood the importance of it. They really valued having service users and carers involved in our projects and RPIWs. But sometimes as work gets in the way again, and as people get back onto the day-to-day, sometimes it was tricky to close the loop and make sure people came along for the whole journey. So after that RPIW, after that workshop had finished, making sure that those service users and carers are kept up to date about exactly what happens going forward. It's not a case of thank you for your support, we'll take it from here. We really wanted to get better at closing the loop and making sure that people stayed up to date, stayed involved, were given the opportunity to be involved in other ways. So that was kind of our big challenge there. So that's kind of some of the challenges. I wanted to start with that because it's not all easy. It's not all, we haven't nailed it here at Southern Health. It's something that we're really actively working on. And there's pockets of really great service user involvement across the trust and quality improvement. But we've had some challenges along the way. If you go to the next slide, please, Sophie. One thing that Southern Health noticed early on, RBIW is Rapid Process Improvement Workshop. So I'll slow down my speech so I can get it across. I know we've got a short amount of time. So I just wanted to share some quick wins we had as the project ran along. And what became clear, it was really powerful moments in these workshops, really powerful moments in these RPIWs often came when service users were involved and carers were involved. One example I've got on the screen is we were running a project around our ECT service, and the project lead, or one of the leads of the ECT service had in their mind that a good way of getting people to and from ECT was to send a patient transport minibus to collect the people from the different units all in one go and bring them all up to the ECT base and have them go through the ECT process and then ferry them all back afterwards. And that camaraderie and that support would be really good for the service users. And one of the service users stood up and said, the thing is, when I'm having ECT, I'm really poorly. I'm not singing Wheels on the Bus with other service users. I'm not feeling the need to be waiting for 4 hours while other service users have their ECT. I want to go and get my ECT, come back and recover. And it was that moment that really kind of changed the direction of the workshop and changed one of the ideas, because it was about the individuals that are having ECT in their journey, as opposed to just blocking them all together and bringing them all in one batch, meaning that some service users were waiting at the beginning or some service users were waiting at the end. So that was quite a powerful turning point. One of the other powerful things was we co-produced service user training for service users that are attending RPIWs. We put on this training for service users so they know how to survive an RPIW, because it's quite an intense week. It's really tricky. It's really intense. So we ran some training, and what was really good is the appetite that service users had to develop this training alongside me, as opposed to me just designing it myself, was great. And we had a great time up in Winchester where we designed this 4-hour session for service users, and it really made a difference to service users that then subsequently then got involved in QI projects, as they came to the RPIWs much more prepared. Another quick win, just being careful of the time. We did a project on Kingsley Ward, one of our adult mental health wards, and it was about freeing up time for staff to care and for staff to be out of the office to be with the patients. And one of the tasks that they were set was to write up everything that they do on a daily basis, all the demands of them on a daily basis, what they have to do on the ward. And as this list was developing, it was getting longer and longer with lots of stuff they have to do in the office. And one of the carers stood up and said, no wonder you haven't got time to care for my daughter when you've got all of this to do. And it's a really powerful moment where the care Kingsley Ward, and it was then that staff in the room really realised that actually there's people at the middle of all this. There's people that, so yes, they can list it, do all these different tasks, they spend all this time working, but it's people that are suffering and people that they need to have time for. So it's just a really powerful moment when both service users and carers were on the same page and with the staff, and they going forward in the RPIW is a really powerful bringing together of people, and it is at that moment that made a significant difference. It's not always about having service users in the room. Sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes it's not appropriate. We did a project on Anstey wards, which is a physical health ward, and not all of the patients on that ward are up and about and mobile, but we needed service user voice. So what we did was we held the project at Anstey ward, and when we wanted feedback, when we wanted ideas and support from service users and carers, people just went up onto the ward and asked our staff. So a reason why I've put that in there, because it's not all about having service users in the room. You have to be creative sometimes. You have to think about how you're going to get the voice of the service user and carer, and it's not always a case of having 1 or 2 people in the room. You have to be creative. You have to think of other ways to do that. So just looking forward, where our team is a lot smaller now. We're running a project less. We're doing less actual projects ourselves and less facilitating the projects ourselves. So the training that we do puts the onus on the people that we train to go out and do service user involvement, and that's not always easy. That's people are sometimes daunted by that. So what's happening soon for us is we're developing service user and introduction to service user and care involvement for staff to come along to learn about how the difficulties that they may come up against, to learn how different techniques of ways of doing things, just to have an introduction to understanding about how to do service user and care involvement. And sometimes it's really simple stuff. Talks about some of the barriers, talks about some of the things that may stop people getting involved, and we just work through that together. So that's a training session we're coming up soon. Next slide. So what next for you guys? The best time to start service user and care involvement is now. Don't be intimidated. Don't be worried about it. It's really important. You have to, and you really must, when it comes to quality improvement, where appropriate, is do it. And there are barriers. There are barriers to it. Sometimes it's not easy to get people in the room. Sometimes patients aren't able to come to the workshops. There's lots of barriers that could be there, and it's up to us to remove them and not use them as excuses. So it's up to us to remove them. For next slide, yeah, that's it. So that's it for me, really. So my plea to you guys is, if there's service user involvement is important to your projects, please get out and do that. Please really work hard to make sure it's authentic and that you close the loop and it's not just a tick box exercise. Really, no quality improvement should go ahead, as it's our service user and care that define what value is. So we know that. So we know that we must go forward with that. Do you have any questions at all?
I've just seen one on our Slido, and if anyone does want to ask anything anonymously, you can join on the screen. But there's a question around where do you recruit your service users and carers from? We also find we use the same people time and time again.
So that's a good question, and that is the tricky part. So obviously we go out and try and do the recruitment ourselves in terms of knowing who these service using carers are. We have our connections, but it's not always possible. And it's important that the project that you're working with, the people that are on the wards, those are the people that know service users best. So really, we tend to try really work hard with those that are either ward based or wherever the project is. If, for example, if it's on a mental health inpatient unit, then we go and we speak to the staff in the ward about any service using carers they think is appropriate. Recently discharged service users and carers, we get in touch with those people, but it's the onus is really on those at the project that are involved in the project, because they know their service using carers best. It's not a case of come into me so they can tick it off. Nathan's going to get find service using carers from nowhere. It's about constantly trying to add to your database, add to your pool of people, and use those connections. So it's not a one size fits all answer, I'm afraid.
Thank you so much. Okay, and just a reminder again, if anyone does want to ask any questions, pop them in the chat or use that Slido. And now we're going to hear from Julie, and I'll stop sharing my screen so you can see her properly. I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Hi, so I'm Julie Redman. I've just recently done the sort of certified training course this year, and I just really wanted to sort of really sell the benefits of the course. At the time of doing the course, I was a practice development, I was a community mental health nurse, and it really sort of brought about a very clear sort of strategy and approach and a framework and the tools to really bring about meaningful change to the patients. I was involved in a project at Elmley, and I could really see the importance, how it brought everybody together, the full multidisciplinary team, from the doctors, the nurses, to the cleaners on the ward, to the admin, to the patients, and how it's really important that we work together to make a real difference to patient care. One of the things I found that's been really beneficial about the QI course, it's really helped improve what I do, how I do it, and it's about being able to really continue to provide outstanding care to my patients, and it's really given me the framework for being able to do that. It's a course I just really like to recommend, and one of the things I really value about the course, it's about how we really involve our patients, our clients, our carers, and they have real meaning and say in how projects work, and without them we wouldn't get that best quality care.
Julie, wow, that was a big sell, and it wasn't meant to be marketed as a big sell.
No, sorry about
No,
that. I just have to say it made a massive difference to the way I work and how I look at things now. And I've always believed, my whole philosophy about nursing is putting the patient at the forefront of care. And with the QI training, I actually found a way of giving the patient a real voice.
Lovely, thank you so much. Is there anything, you know, that you found that was, you know, particularly challenging, or that you'd like to see more from it, or any comments or anything?
I think it's really important that when we're looking about bringing change, we actually ask the patients, the carers, and the staff at the shop floor what they want. When I was involved in my training course, we came up with a project which was owned by senior managers, doctors, but not actually meant a lot to people on the shop floor. And so there wasn't really that much engagement, that much sell-up. It didn't really make that much difference. But by actually finding what patients and staff would actually make their lives better, what would improve their care, it's really getting a full sign up from everybody, from all disciplines, and in particular including the sort of more junior staff as well. It really does make a difference getting the whole team involvement.
Thank you so much, and a great piece of learning for us as well from that project. Thank you. So we have had a few questions on Slido around co-production, so we'll come back to them in a little while, but please do continue to use that or the chat if you'd like to. And now, Kate, I do have a poster for you on here, but did you want me to stop sharing the screen so you can chat for a bit? What's your preference?
Yes, that would be fine if you stop sharing the screen. That would be lovely. I'm going to introduce myself. My name's Kate King. I am the matron for Portsmouth and South East Hants. So I have got 4 wards, 2 at Petersfield Hospital and 2 at Gosport. And we are rehabilitation wards. So I'm just going to set the scene, because we started our QI project back in February 22, following a rather difficult autumn winter period, which some of you may be kind of familiar with that push from your local acute trust and, you know, winter pressures and all of that. So we'd managed to limp and hobble through Christmas and autumn, and we're really, you know, just having a reflect on how we'd managed, and, you know, we were always kind of increasing our bed base, and it just felt really, really highly pressured. You know, we didn't really feel like we had control over what we were doing, and it really felt that we were being done to, rather than actually planning our service in a really proactive way. So we decided, with the help of our QI team, to do a piece of work and really to look at, we called it the transformation of improving system flow, and with that, increasing patient and staff satisfaction. We really wanted to make sure it wasn't just about getting them in and out, you know, because sometimes especially at Christmas and high pressure times, it really seems to come about the figures, but actually there are people in our beds and there are nurses on our wards who are delivering that care. And actually it's really important that on the shop floor, that we remember that they are people, they're not just numbers. It's really easy when you're sat in these meetings to kind of be thinking that you're moving chess people around like in some Second World War film where you're kind of moving the bed on a stick. And we wanted to make sure that we really thought about the people on the floor. So we did a bit of QI work, and we had a couple of QI days. We got all the key players involved, and we came up with really two things that we wanted to look at. We wanted to look at the pre-admission work. So we have a team who's now called the Rehabilitation and Flow team, and they go into our acute partner and they triage and accept and do everything with our patients before they come to us. And then we were going to look, another group looked at admission to discharge from our beds. And that's the bit I'm Home for Lunch really talks about. So I've kind of said a bit about how the system was at the time. It felt really stressful. There was so much waste. It was really reactive, you know, from the girls on the floor. I don't know how many of you are nurses, but actually working on a floor, you know, 90, I think at the time it was about 67% of our admissions and discharges happened on the late shift. Late shifts generally have less staff than an early. There's less seniors around. You know, when you just look at your trends for your incidents, more of them happen on the late and the early part of the night shift. So actually there's a lot of risk involved, and we're, by not having really good systems and processes in place to get those people in and out early, we're adding to that risk, we're exacerbating that problem. And you know, and just from when I was a ward manager, trying to get anybody to swap onto the late shift was just, you know, there's that anecdotal, how many admissions have I got? No, I'm not doing it. I've got 3 in 3 out, and that's just one end of the ward. No, I'm not doing it. I'll stay on the early, thank you very much. So that was really difficult. So we kind of looked at that, and then we decided that actually we would break down into smaller groups. So we mapped our pathway and we came up with a variety of actions. So every morning, what we used to do, the wards would report what beds they'd got, and then we'd have this big meeting at 10 o'clock, and there was kind of myself, and there'd be 8 Bs on this meeting, and there'd be 7s, and you know, so many people on this meeting. And actually from this QI bit of work, we had it's like an epiphany that actually at the weekend there was 2 people who did all the beds for all our wards, and they would be either a 6 or 7, and they could be one from who worked in QA and one from the physical health wards, and they managed to do all the beds all over the weekends and all the holidays. And actually they were just best left to it. So immediately our quickest win, we worked out, we probably freed up 3.5 hours of people's time per day. And that was generally quite high grade people. They didn't need to be there, you know, and it was really difficult at the beginning when we went to Opal 4 and things, to really make sure, myself included, stay away from that meeting. Do not go. Just let the girls do what they do. They know how to do their job. So that was our initial thing. And then what we decided to do was that we would not have a meeting as such, that the girls involved in the bed allocation would just do a Teams meeting or a telephone call when they decided. So generally now they do a touch in the morning, they discuss what beds they've got, and they allocate the beds. 10 o'clock was too late to start allocating beds. If you do that, you've got to, you know, the ward won't know for another hour. So again, we're expediting the problem of patients arriving late. Another thing we also did, we tried to work upstream with our beds. So the wards would tell, we have a 7-day planner, a rolling planner of every day a bed is coming up. We've got a confirmed discharge. And as our waiting list, we would allocate patients to those beds upstream working. The wards would be told, you've got a bed on Wednesday. So they can get the TTOs, they can get the transport booked, they can get all those things done. And as part of that, we would expect our patient to be admitted as you know, standard as an early bird admission. That helps our acute care partner with their expectations. Each ward at QA is expected to have so many early bird discharges, helps them to use their discharge lounge and facilitate uptake from MAU or, you know, from ED helps their flow, and from us, we're pulling the patients through rather than them kind of being pushed from the acute care provider into our beds. So it's taken a bit of what's the word? We've had to do a bit of a campaign. We've got some lovely leaflets, which are our home for lunch leaflets, which all our patients get on there as part of their admission. Oh, there they are. So they all get those as part of their admission pack, and it talks about all the benefits for patients going home early, what they may need. And actually, a bonus of this, again, for the late staff, it's all about the staff and the patients on the floor. If you go home early in the day and you are discharged and something's forgotten, or you need a community nurse or another team needs to come out, or for some reason something has not gone right, it's much easier to get other professionals into their home, before business shuts at 4 or 5, because it's always, from my experience, always 6 o'clock. The admission that went home at 4 o'clock, something's gone wrong, and it's just manic on the wards. There's so much pressure on the girls. They've got to try and ring everybody's gone home, and it just made it so has made it so much easier. It's so less stressful for the teams. So we've got this leaflet we sent. We did a massive mail drop with this and some posters out to all our care providers that we use, to try and get them to really push for early discharge. When we're on meetings with our ASC colleagues, we really push for a daytime. If someone's going home with a BD POC, we ask for one at lunchtime and one at tea time on the first day, so they can get home, and then the next day it will be morning and evening. I'm trying to think, what else do I need to tell you? So our outcomes were reduced waste and repetition, and some of that happened immediately, with the 3.5 hours every day. Trying to get upstream working, just reduced stress and anxiety for patients as well, because we used to have patients who would, you're going tomorrow, and they didn't want to have a drink, they didn't want to have any appearance, they'd wait and then the transport wouldn't turn up, so then it would be for the next day, and they never knew. So it's just much easier for them, much less stressful. It's increased the safety on the wards, because we've gone from potentially kind of having after 5 o'clock, 67% of our admissions, we've gone to 30% of our admissions are after 5 o'clock, and that's made a massive difference to the girls on the floor. I think they really appreciate that, and it's much easier to fill gaps with staffing rather than kind of having to beg people to please swap onto the late. They're much happier to do it. So yeah, that was our QI. I think from my point of view, it really helped because I had really good senior support with that. And I know Dean, I used to do a weekly update with my team, which I chaired, and then Dean from the QI team would support me with. And it's really important that you do that and that you have buy-in, because otherwise it's just another thing that kind of gets put to one side. But actually I had really good support from my ops manager and my head of nursing and the QI team. So it's been, and my ward managers and the teams on the floor. And I think actually getting the cascade of information down to the people on the floor about why we're doing it and getting them involved in the changes was really important, because then they can see the worth of it. Otherwise it's just another leaflet to go in a file that no one ever looks at, and it's got to be real and it's got to be tangible. So sorry, that's me, I'll stop.
Thank you so much, Kate. And just to let you know, in the chat, there's some, Jude has put in the chat that what you're saying makes so much sense. I'm a nurse as well. And there is a question around, were you able to measure in any way the money that you saved from that time, or would you think about measuring the time and money?
Yeah, I have. I think we worked out the 3.5 hours, just that we'd saved over a year. That worked out about £20,000. That in itself is crazy. I think, yeah, I think it'd be really hard to work out the money for anything else, but I just think in terms of patient experience and staff, it's much better. It just feels less, it feels less pressured. actually our documentation's better because we're getting patients earlier in the day. They're getting clerked that day. You know, over Easter, quite often you get patients admitted on Thursday and they wouldn't get to see anybody really. They wouldn't get clerked till the Tuesday. Now they're getting clerked and they're being seen by physiotherapists before they go. So we're really been able to put plans in place and really continue, you know, start their therapy from the moment they arrive. So patient experience wise, I think that's our main improvement, as well as the flow. That's also got value, but I think for the teams, it's about the experience for everybody who's working in it, because they do, you know, you feel you're in it, don't you, at the time, especially when it's really busy and pressured and it's Christmas and all of the above.
Thank you so much. So
That's
I'll
all
keep
right.
an eye on the chat and the questions as well. But a real reflection there about, you know, that little bit of QI coaching and what result that has had on top of the monetary amount saved and the time saved, the feeling of, you know, people, you know, able to get in, not so scared to work on the late shift. The fact that people have got more time to then freed up to do other things, go home on time, whatever it is. Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing.
Sorry, I think something really powerful as well from that is that, you know, when the people with the touch point calls and with leaving the team to allocate the patients to them, you know, they're doing the job. They don't need an 8A or an 8B to sit in the meeting and them to have that added pressure, but they're not this person in the meeting's not actually adding any value to that meeting. Potentially they're just adding kind of presence, and actually the teams do it all the time, and it's also showing that we trust them to do their job, and that's really, I think teams really need that sometimes, that actually they can do it when you're not here. So actually they don't need you. You go and do your bits for the, you know, for the major incident or critical incident, whatever. You go and do your bits. We'll just get our heads down and we'll get this done, because this is what they know and they know their jobs. So I think for the teams that was quite powerful as well.
Thank you so much, Kate.
Okay.
And Dean, our Dean, has put exactly the same in the chat again, that actually it's less about the money saved. Those people still have a job. It's not like that money was sipped. You know, people are able to do what they need to do. What's the impact of that? You know, massive impact. Okay, thank you so much. So Liz, I see you've joined the call as well. Welcome. Thank you so much for dialing in. What I've been doing is just not sharing my screen and letting people talk. Does that work for you, or do you want me to keep the backdrop up?
No, you can turn that off, and I mean, I think we'll probably do a double act around the work that we've done, because you've been very heavily involved with the Ravenswood, but doing a wider piece of work around blanket restrictions and rules within Southern Health. So Sophie, I don't know whether, do you want to start with where it came from, why we looked at Ravenswood and a bit about Ravenswood?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. And again, if people have got questions that they want to ask anonymously, please post it on the Slido. There's quite a few questions in there about co-production. We'll come back to that if we've got time at the end. So I will just fly through these because you'll get the slides, so you don't need me to read it all out. Ravenswood House Hospital is a medium secure and low secure unit in Hampshire. And the purpose of this project was around, on top of there being a national driver for reducing restrictive practice and a lot of national work, the Mental Health Collaborative, which is, I think, just the collaborative now, of the Wessex AHSN, and all West of England AHSNs have been involved in that work. But in particular, Ravenswood House, we were looking at a project around reducing blanket restrictions, which was one of the sort of top ideas for how to improve safety on a ward, how to make things feel better on a ward. And actually, it was something that was raised at council meetings. Each of the wards has a patient council, which is run by the service users on the wards and attended by the ward administrator, the ward clerk, and one of the healthcare support workers, or the ward manager, depending on who's around at the time. And a key frustration was the feeling of there being very different rules depending on either which unit you were in, or depending on the staff member that you spoke to on the day, and what was actually happening. I think there was a lot of, confusion about what's the rule around this. Okay, I remember that's a rule from some time ago, but not quite sure why I think it's there. What Ravenswood House have done is they decided to facilitate a staff and patient engagement event. So over 3 days, they had people coming along into a hall area, provided refreshments, and posted up the results of some investigative work. One of the matrons, who's also done the QI leadership training over 5 days, had gone around and asked people, what do you think the rules are? Can you let me, in a sentence, what's a rule that you know about? Didn't have to be written down anywhere, just what people had understood were the rules. And then over these 3 days, people were invited to describe, what was good or bad about those rules. Do they want to keep them, get rid of them, or not? We did produce a video, which I won't play now, but you're very welcome to watch it back because it is just the sort of results of posters. But what that engagement event revealed was that there were people who felt very differently about the rules. There were rules that seemed to have no basis in NICE guidelines or our policies. They'd sort of come about from nowhere. A few examples of those were like, in one place you can't have more than 13 articles of clothing, you can't use cotton buds, you can't spend more than 15 minutes on the phone, can't run in the corridors, things like that are actually might have been the result of an incident at one point, but didn't necessarily need to carry on. So what they've now done is there is a master spreadsheet of all of these rules, but what was very important to the team was that there was consistency between each of the wards, and that people dealt with those processes to challenge those blanket restrictions in the same way. So they designed a flowchart, designed a whiteboard, printed out all of the rules as they'd heard them and stuck them up on each of the boards. And those are maintained by someone in the service user group who manages the boards for the walls, as well as the ward clerks. And this isn't quite happening yet, but the plan is that each of the rules, the ward will decide what's the most, annoying one right now, move it physically along the board, and have a multidisciplinary conversation with the patients, with their carers, or their loved ones, whoever's visiting, and the team who are, well informed to make those decisions, and either archive those rules or do a few PDSA cycles to figure out how can we make those rules less restrictive, with the goal of becoming a least restrictive place, bearing in mind that it is medium and low secure wards. So yeah, there is a poster which is on that video, but I think out of the 43 rules that were identified, including some security measures, but not all of the security measures, there are a number that are in review and a number that have been withdrawn. And I think they're very sort of aware of the PDSA cycles of it. And even the blanket restrictions board, actually some of the terminology has changed more recently. Some of the feedback was that actually some of the terminology was really over the top, really fancy, didn't necessarily need to be. So as a service user group on the ward, a few of the people fed back what was going to be more friendly, and terminology like archived, we archived, and yeah, I've just made it a little bit more user friendly. And what we're doing at the moment is, and I don't know, Liz, you might be able to feedback a little bit more, but really be mindful about how can we evidence that there have actually been improvements, because we are, it's quite, we can say things feel a lot safer and that's what people are reporting already, but actually we do want to have that data behind us, because it's a national project. Amazingly, we've got some real key measures, and there is a lot of reporting, so hopefully we will be able to have a really nice, this is what's happened, let's improve it again, or this is what's happened, it wasn't quite as expected, people aren't reporting that they feel safer, therefore what do we need to do again to improve it? And I think that's it from me, so I will go back and stop sharing, and Liz, if you want to just give any context to that.
Yeah, it's interesting just trying to quantify what the improvement is, because I'm trying to do a very similar thing across our acute, inpatient and psychiatric intensive care units, and I know I think one measure will be around people's staff's time and the time, because within the acute and PQ, some of the things that historically have been a blanket restriction, things like telephone charges, which we have reversed that now, but you can imagine how many times people are asking for their charges back and staff needing to go and get them. So I think that can be one measure, particularly around personal items. But I think it's that qualitative stuff actually, which is really important, people's experience of the service, because I can't imagine how it must feel like to come into a mental health unit and have your possessions taken away from you without any real good justification in some cases. So I would hope that as we move along, people's experience of coming into hospital will be an awful lot better. Yes, it's quite a journey we're on, and it's quite for me, it's quite a new journey in some ways, and not without some resistance from a few people who think that we should be restrictive, and or rather there's a tension between health and safety and least restrictive practice. So I suppose I could put it in that way, but yeah, I'm not sure, Sophie, if you want me to say anything else there.
I'm sure that's absolutely fine. I wanted to leave a bit of time for questions anyway, and actually there have been loads of questions around co-production, so it might be that we just finish off on that. But thank you to Liz and Julie, because actually you're QI certified leaders and are using your quality improvement skills going forward, and to Kate as well, who's had that bit of QI coaching and a bit of support from our small QI team, but is still seeing the benefits and really fluently able to use a lot of the terminology, which is fantastic and a great point for us. So that, I guess, the only other thing that I wanted to share, and something that we talk about in that mental health collaborative when we all get together, the National Reducing Restrictive Practice Project, we use the terminology shamelessly steal. I'm sure I've heard it in lots of other places as well. There are a number of resources. Some of it, we've stolen from other places ourselves, or copied, loosely, found things on the internet. And we keep all of our resources on our intranet pages so that people are able to use them if they want to. Sometimes we, introduce something and then sort of hold someone's hands through it while they're producing it. Other times, like our project initiation document or project idea brief, people might just, use themselves and never actually come back to us. As I said at the beginning, one thing we're desperately, considering how can we do it better is around closing the loop, is thinking, if some great work has happened here, how can we share that wider? But equally, how can we show as a quality improvement team that we're actually doing a good job? Not just we've trained this many people in this much time, or we've delivered these training sessions or these coaching conversations. But how can you capture that? What we're really exploring right now is a sort of dashboard. How can we log what we're doing in a way that you might complete a patient visit or something, outcome it on Rio to show, we've done this is what we've achieved, this is what we've managed. So yes, that's what I guess I'm really interested, or we're really interested in your ideas. But you'll get this slide with the links. And I do have a number of co-production questions. So Nathan, you're still on the call. Are you happy for me to sort of read a few things out to you? Yeah. In the 4 minutes that we've got, and we'll just see how we get on. So one of the questions is around the process of recruiting experts by experience. How formal is it? Are there any limitations with like the DBS, GDPR, any recommendations about expenses payments? And I know we have expenses forms and stuff.
So we don't have a formal recruitment process. We very much, it depends on what the project is, where the project is, what the project's about. We then get in touch with those stakeholders that will know the service using carers best. So whether that's the nurses that work with them or that have worked with them, depending on where the project is. So there's no formal recruitment process. They come along to a workshop and yeah, they get paid expenses. It's in line with the Southern Health policy about paying for service user and care involvement. So their expenses and everything is paid. They get paid a certain amount for their time, depending on how long they're there for the week or for the few days. So they get paid for their time. And then we asked them if we can store their contact details for future projects. So we store on a database what type of thing that they're interested in, what type of thing they'd like to be involved in the future. And then when those projects come up, when those areas of interest come up, we get back in touch with them and we get them involved. So we're always building a bit of a database.
Thank you. There's a comment rather than a question from Chris, who's also an expert by experience, and has said that it's reassuring for you to share the similar challenges, and great to see the areas of potential. Great work, and thanks for raising the profile of people with lived experience, of using lived experience. Okay, I'll go through one or two more of the questions because some have come up twice. How much co-production needs to be done fresh? I wonder if co-production has been done at a pilot site for a pathway, if this could be transferred, and is there somewhere where the results of co-production work is shared? So I think that's the key thing. How much of it needs to be done right then and there? Can you share the message out so that the learning's shared amongst other teams? And what is the best way of sharing that?
Well, the best way of sharing, I guess, if I try and understand the question, I guess the best way of sharing the success of co-production is the success of a project. So I think projects always more likely to be successful if you've got good co-production involved in it. So that's the best way of sharing what co-production success is in the success of projects. It's also, we have in the past, some of our service using carers that have been involved have then gone on to get employment. So often it's not just about what service users can offer us, but it's about what they get from the involvement. So we've had a number of people or a couple of people gain employment following their involvement with us. So it's helped build their confidence, to help give them repurpose. So that's another way of looking at success with co-production. Thank
you so much. And we'll come back to the other questions. We'll get our heads together and write them down and share a response. Sam has put in the chat, Sam Burgess from our library team, just to let you all know that our library team repurposes the QI Somerset bulletin, so shares that out to all our certified leaders. And Liz, you did have a hand up. Did you have a quick question?
No, it wasn't a question. It was just a comment about that co-production. I mean, it's just so it's crucial, and I've just taken on this post of head of nursing positive practice with a real focus around reducing restricted practice, and I've got 3 experts by experience who are working alongside me, and actually hearing their experience and learning from them is what's going to take this, make this a meaningful project that I'm doing.
Thank you so much. And we are 1 minute over time. I see people are heading off already, so thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sophie, and thank you to everybody for joining us today. And I hope you found it all incredibly insightful and interesting. We've popped some of the links in the chat box, and we will send out a follow-up email with further details on the presentation. So thank you all so much for joining us, and we hope to see you at the next one next month.